Namaskar. Welcome. In this video, I'd like to share 3 thoughts that are related to each other and have come up in my mind recently. The first one is this: being God is happiness. Being me is suffering. The second one, remembering God is being God. And the third one, a slight modification of that, serving God is being God. So let's start with the first one. Being God is happiness, being me is suffering. So as long as I think of myself as the small self, the personality, and the body and the world which I find around me, no matter if I have a happy life and lots of nice things are happening, it will still be suffering. Nobody has a totally happy life. There's alternating things, happy and sad, happening all the time. So even the happiest life is only a relatively happy life. And even the happiest of those relatively happy lives are incomplete. It is not absolute, constant happiness. And for someone with a powerful spiritual desire for self-realization, for enlightenment, anything short of enlightenment is some kind of suffering. And so that's what I meant by being me is suffering. And, because it's inevitable, being a limited human being, just the very fact that there's any limitation at all is some kind of suffering. And then being God is happiness. So God is the great self, limitless, constant, continuous, absolute, right? And that is what we are searching for. So only when we ourselves become the absolute do we experience or do we achieve the happiness that is driving us, So that's what is meant by this. Being God is happiness, being me is suffering. And I find that useful because so often, habitually, the impact of the momentum of our past lives as animals and human beings, we are always looking for some limited form of happiness. And the very fact that we are looking for something limited and we identify it as happiness is a mistake. It means that we can never be satisfied ultimately and absolutely with any kind of limited happiness. Therefore, we should be not looking for that. We should be looking for absolute happiness. And absolute happiness can only be achieved when one self becomes absolute. So being God is the happiness that we are looking for. Then the second phrase, remembering God is being God. So, the first phrase presupposes the question, so how do you then become God, right? And we come back to that fundamental principle of becoming and transforming, which is you become what you think. And remembering to think about the absolute is the most important mental activity that helps us become God. Now, the interesting thing, which I think is important it was certainly an important thing for me to understand. I guess it will be important to others also, is that in some senses, you become what you think immediately. It is a process of gradual transformation, but, when I remember God, the experience that I have of something different, of my consciousness changing, is instant. The instant that I remember God, I feel a change of consciousness. Now, what's making it only partial is in a large degree because I can't remember God all the time. I remember and then I forget, or my concentration, which is a kind of memory, is imperfect, right? So I'm half thinking about God and half thinking about, some problem that is bothering me, and consciousness is going back and forth, and that's why I'm not getting a full experience of being God. But if I were to be able to remember God without any breaks, constantly, totally, and perfectly, then there wouldn't be any gap. It wouldn't be that I would slowly become God by that. You are what you think, basically. So the change is instant. The only thing holding you back is how well can you think about that and how constantly you can think about that. So remembering God is being God. Try it out for yourself. See what it feels like. The moment you remember God, you will feel an instant transformation. Of course, that's assuming you've worked at this a little bit, so you already have some experience of that. If you remember God, if it's the first time you've tried it and you've never thought of God in your life, of course, you won't have a sense of what God is. So remembering God will be remembering something that you have no idea about. But if you've been meditating for some time and you have this spiritual experience of God, then the moment you remember, that experience comes to you. Yeah. So remembering God is being God. And then the last phrase is serving God is being God. So you can't serve somebody or something without thinking about them. But it's a special kind of thinking. It's not thinking with hate. It's thinking with love. It's thinking with an unselfish attitude. So, and it's a very kind of, when you have that feeling of service, as our Guru Sri Sri Anandamurti points out, it purifies the mind, which has a very positive impact on concentration. So having this feeling of service improves your concentration, and therefore your experience is more intense. So when you have this feeling of service, your mind is focused, there's this beautiful unselfish sense, and more of your consciousness is able to go to the person that you are serving, because there's no thought of yourself, right? So, and because as you think, so you become, so this serving God immediately gives you that experience of, your mind is associated and mixed and identified with the feeling of God. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense to you, and I hope also that it's a little bit useful in your meditation. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful week ahead. Namaskar.